You don't lack dreams. You don't lack goals. What's missing is the ability to consistently do what needs to be done, especially when you don't feel like doing it. That's self-discipline, and it's the defining trait that separates those who move forward from those who stay stuck, trapped in cycles of delay, regret, and frustration. Discipline isn't born from a quote or a burst of motivation. It's built in the quiet moments, through the habits you repeat every single day. It's the choice to delay comfort in service of growth. It's how you show up on slow mornings, tired nights, and when no one's paying attention. In this video, we're going straight into 7 practical, no-fluff techniques to help you master self-discipline. No need for perfection, just honest, consistent effort. If you've ever wondered why your motivation fades or why your momentum disappears after a few days, this is where that cycle ends. Stick with me until the end, especially for techniques 6 and 7. They're often overlooked, but they're the most transformative when it comes to sustaining daily discipline. If something in this message could help your future self or someone you care about, hit subscribe and comment discipline below to commit with me. Let's start building the strongest version of you right now. 1. Start with small commitments. Self-discipline doesn't start with a dramatic life overhaul. It begins with a quiet decision. One small, intentional act. So small, in fact, that most people dismiss its power. I remember my friend Jeff. Fired up on New Year's Day, he committed to waking up at 5 a.m., running 10 miles, reading a book a week, cutting sugar, and meditating nightly. 3 days later, he was back to sleeping in, binge-watching Netflix, and eating donuts without a shred of guilt. His problem wasn't motivation. It was the scale of his commitment. He went too big, too fast, and burned out before discipline had a chance to take root. That's what most people get wrong. Discipline isn't forged in a burst of intensity. It's shaped through small, intentional repetition. The truth? Mastering self-discipline isn't about pushing harder. It's about starting smaller. When you commit to something realistic, something you can actually follow through on, you're not just completing an action. You're reinforcing your identity. You're telling yourself, I keep my word to me. A glass of water before coffee. A made bed, 3 sentences in a journal. These might seem insignificant, but they're not. They're mental reps, small wins that strengthen your internal belief system. And belief is where real consistency begins. Because discipline isn't about chasing big goals with occasional bursts of energy. It's about choosing the small, repeatable actions that compound over time. The man who develops real willpower isn't the one who crushes a single day. He's the one who quietly repeats his choices over and over, especially when no one is watching. Let's say you want to improve your focus. You don't need to cut every distraction cold turkey. Start with 5 minutes of deep, undistracted work. Phone off, tabs closed. That's your win, and wins build momentum. Those 5 minutes turn into 10, then 30. Eventually, they become hours of uninterrupted progress. That's how you rewire your mind, by giving yourself something small you can succeed at. It builds trust. It builds reliability. And that becomes your foundation for discipline. Each small win reinforces your self-image. And suddenly, future commitments don't feel like pressure. They feel like a natural extension of who you are. But here's the deeper truth. When you start small, you bypass the internal resistance that kills most good intentions. You eliminate the daily debate. You don't have to ask yourself, do I feel like doing this today? You already know. You've already decided. Once you've proven to yourself that you can handle it, it stops feeling like a struggle. It becomes part of who you are. That's when self-discipline shifts from a daily battle to a steady rhythm. People often confuse discipline with restriction, but in truth, Small, intentional commitments create freedom. Because when you're no longer fighting yourself, you unlock energy. Energy to focus, create, and move forward. You stop overthinking and start doing. You stop chasing perfection and start respecting progress. Every small promise you keep is a signal of integrity, a signal of self-respect. And self-respect is the root of lasting discipline. So no, you don't need to overhaul your life this Monday. You don't need to run 10 miles or meditate for an hour. You need to make one choice, one decision that aligns with your long-term vision. And tomorrow, you make it again. And again. Because discipline isn't something you force. It's something you build. Brick by brick. Choice by choice. Moment by moment. Not with pressure, but with precision. Not with intensity. Because discipline isn't something you force. It's something you build. Brick by brick. Choice by choice. Moment by moment. Not with pressure, but with precision. Not with intensity, but with consistency. One small commitment at a time. 2. Prioritize what truly matters. Self-discipline isn't about doing more. It's about doing what matters most. It's easy to mistake busy for productive, but motion is not the same as progress. I remember asking my younger brother, "You're working all day, but are you actually moving toward what you want?" He didn't answer right away. That silence revealed something we all feel but rarely admit. We're constantly in motion, but rarely in alignment. We check boxes, answer messages, clean up the small stuff. But the big priorities, they stay untouched. The world rewards responsiveness, not reflection. That's why so many people finish the day exhausted, but unsure of what they actually accomplished. Without clarity, discipline has no direction. Real progress requires ruthless focus. It means knowing what matters and aligning your time accordingly. Discipline isn't about suppressing laziness. It's about protecting your energy. It's knowing which battles are worth your full effort. Because you can work all day and still feel empty if none of that work moved the needle. The most disciplined people aren't the busiest. They're the clearest. They don't chase every opportunity. They defend their time like it's sacred, because it is. They understand clarity is power. When you know your priorities, your decisions sharpen. You stop saying yes to every distraction and start saying no with purpose. Imagine this. Someone wakes up, rushes into tasks, joins meetings, replies to messages. They stay busy from morning to night, but nothing meaningful gets done. That's not a failure of effort. It's a failure of hierarchy. Without identifying the few big rocks, the essential tasks that create real momentum, your day fills up with sand, trivial tasks, low-impact work, noise, and just like that, the day's gone, the week's gone, the life slips by, not from a lack of effort, but from a lack of focus. Discipline means saying no. No to tasks that look urgent but lead nowhere. No to habits that steal your time but offer no return. No to people who pull you away from your path. It's not easy. It takes courage. Sometimes it means disappointing others. But every time you protect your priorities, you strengthen your purpose. Planning helps here. When you plan tomorrow the night before, you reclaim control of your future. Pair that with time blocking, dedicated hours for deep, focused work, and you stop hoping to find time. You start making it. But even then, discipline isn't static. Your priorities will evolve. What mattered 6 months ago might not matter now. That's why discipline requires reflection. Check in with yourself. Ask, does my time reflect my values? Are my actions leading me where I want to go? If not, adjust. That's not failure. That's growth. Because the truth is, discipline isn't about trying harder. It's about aligning better. When your time, values, and energy are aligned, discipline doesn't feel forced. It flows. You don't have to push yourself to do what matters. because what matters becomes the only thing worth doing. So stop chasing busy. Start choosing better. Prioritization isn't a productivity hack. It's a disciplined mindset. And when mastered, it gives you something no amount of hustle can offer. Momentum that actually means something. 3. Visibility fuels habits. There's another key to building lasting habits: visibility. When you track a habit, even with a simple check mark, you give your brain tangible proof of progress. It satisfies your natural desire for closure. And over time, that sense of streak, that growing line of momentum, becomes a silent motivator. You don't want to break the chain. You want to keep showing up. You want to protect the identity you've been building. And that's how habits begin to reinforce themselves. What starts as conscious effort turns into rhythm. What once felt like resistance becomes your new default. You stop using mental energy debating whether or not to do the thing. You just do it. Because you've done it before. Because repetition builds confidence. And confidence erases doubt. The longer you stay consistent, the less your brain sees the behavior as optional. At some point, you stop pushing the habit. The habit starts pulling you. That's the turning point. Discipline isn't born from dramatic decisions. It's built through small, quiet rituals repeated daily. You're not just trying to be disciplined for a day or a week. You're shaping a disciplined identity. And the strongest identity is the one that doesn't need convincing. It acts without resistance. Because it's simply who you are. When habits take the wheel, discipline stops being a struggle. It becomes your default setting. That's how you win, not by force, but by design. 4. Master the art of delayed gratification. Discipline is the ability to choose what you want most over what you want right now. It's not about punishment. It's not about living a joyless life. It's about owning your power, the power to pause. Picture this. It's late. You open the fridge. There's that slice of cake whispering comfort. But earlier that day, you looked in the mirror and said, "I want to feel lighter, stronger, healthier by summer." In that moment, you're standing between two desires. One offers a quick hit. The other leads to long-term confidence. Discipline begins when you recognize that difference and still choose the harder path. Delayed gratification isn't glamorous, but it's one of the clearest signs of self-mastery. It separates emotional decisions from intentional ones. The people we admire for their strength and focus, they're not immune to temptation. They've just trained themselves to stretch the space between impulse and action. They've built the ability to sit with discomfort because they know a moment of pleasure isn't worth months of regret. This matters most when you're vulnerable, tired, bored, frustrated. That's when your future self is counting on you the most. And this goes far beyond food or fitness. It's about how you manage your time, attention, and money. It's the decision to wait before making an unnecessary purchase, to work for 20 more minutes instead of scrolling, to have the hard conversation now instead of letting it explode later. Every one of those decisions strengthens a muscle. And like any muscle, it grows with repetition. One powerful tool, visualization. Your mind follows your focus. So when you're tempted, shift it. Don't obsess over what you're giving up. Visualize what you're building. Don't fixate on the discomfort of saying no to the donut. Picture how you'll feel when your clothes fit the way you want. Don't resent staying in to work. Visualize the pride of finishing the thing most people avoid. When you see the reward clearly, the sacrifice feels smaller. That clarity becomes fuel. Another practical technique, the delay rule. When you feel the urge to act impulsively, buy, eat, react, tell yourself to wait 10 minutes. That pause disrupts the pattern. It allows emotion to settle. It gives logic a seat at the table. Most urges fade when you stop feeding them. And if they're still there 10 minutes later, you're approaching them with awareness, not impulse. Of course, it doesn't become easy overnight. Temptation will always exist, but your relationship with it will change. You stop seeing discomfort as punishment and start seeing it as proof that you're growing. That shift rewires everything. Every time you delay gratification, you're casting a vote for your future self. You're telling your subconscious, I can be trusted with hard choices. And over time, that trust compounds. It becomes resilience. It makes the next decision easier. Because the person who can wait, who can sit in the space between craving and action, holds more power than the one who always gets what he wants right now. Real success doesn't come from how fast you can get something. It comes from how long you're willing to wait for what truly matters. 5. Build a routine that anchors you. Discipline is not about occasional bursts of effort. It's about becoming someone who follows through, not sometimes, but always. Take your mornings, for example. A clear, intentional routine at the start of your day sets the tone for everything that follows. It doesn't need to be extreme. What matters is alignment, something that matches your energy and serves your goals. Whether it's a short walk, a journal entry, or a few quiet moments with coffee before the noise begins. That first hour shapes your mindset. It sets your focus. It puts you in control before the world has a chance to pull you in 1,000 directions. And when your day ends with equal intention, a wind-down ritual that clears your mind and primes your focus for tomorrow, you close a full loop of discipline. Morning and night become anchors, and in between, you operate with clarity. But structure isn't the same as rigidity. A strong routine allows space for life. Flexibility isn't failure, it's wisdom. Interruptions happen, plans shift. But when your framework is solid, you bend without breaking. You adjust without losing yourself. That's what real mental discipline looks like. Not perfection, but steadiness in the ebb and flow. Within that structure, boundaries become powerful. You protect time for deep work, for stillness, for the priorities that often get buried beneath chaos. This isn't about being robotic or antisocial. It's about being intentional with your time. You stop living reactively. You start living with direction. Eventually, your routine stops being just a schedule. It becomes a system, a quiet engine that moves you forward. Even on the days when your motivation is gone, you stop relying on willpower because the structure carries you, and that movement becomes identity. Discipline, in its truest form, is rarely about effort in the moment. It's the effort you invest ahead of time to make the moment easier. That's why a well-designed routine is one of the most powerful tools you have. When you commit to it, not perfectly, but persistently, you give yourself the clearest path to lasting results. Not because you're forcing yourself every day, but because you've built a life where success becomes the default. That's not a restriction. That's real freedom. 6. Embrace discomfort as a teacher. Discipline doesn't thrive in comfort. It's forged in friction. I once joined a friend for a boxing class. 10 minutes in, drenched in sweat, lungs burning, legs shaking, I wanted to quit. He looked over and said, "That feeling right there? That's what I trained for." He wasn't training to win titles. He was training not to walk away from hard things in life. That moment changed how I viewed discomfort. It stopped being the enemy. It became the teacher. Discipline only matures when you consistently step outside what feels easy. It's easy to focus when you're rested. It's easy to speak when everyone agrees. It's easy to act when you feel inspired. But those moments don't shape you. Growth lives where friction exists. Every time you follow through on a task that drains you, stay silent when your emotions beg to explode, or finish something you are tempted to avoid. You're building a muscle more powerful than any other, inner strength. And that strength becomes the silent foundation of everything you build. Discomfort isn't there to punish you. It's there to sharpen you. Most people avoid it, mistaking struggle for failure. But discomfort is a signal. It tells you you're doing something different, something difficult, something worth the effort. And when you learn to read that signal, you stop trying to escape it. You enter it, because that's where the transformation lives. Every act of self-discipline has discomfort baked into it. Writing the hard message, saying no to what's easy, speaking up when silence feels safer, beginning when you feel unprepared. They're not glamorous, but they build the kind of person who doesn't fold under pressure, the kind who shows up, not just when it's easy, but when it's needed. That's the kind of person people admire, but rarely understand. And the way to build that mindset? It's simple, but not easy. You deliberately choose discomfort in small ways. Take the stairs when the elevator calls. Turn your phone off for an hour to think. Push one more rep when your body says stop. These moments seem small, but they're daily reminders that you're not ruled by impulse. You're training control, and control, repeated, compounds. Discomfort also has a voice, a quiet, biting one. You're not ready. You can't do this. You'll fail. Most people listen. Disciplined people respond. They remind themselves why they started. They reframe the pain as progress. They act despite the noise in their head. Because the fear of discomfort is almost always worse than discomfort itself. And when you act in spite of that fear, you gain something no one can take from you. Trust in yourself. Act, reflect, and remember the win. When you act, especially when it's hard, write it down. How you felt before, how you felt after. Most times, what started as resistance ends in relief. What felt overwhelming often transforms into clarity. That memory becomes a tool. Next time you hesitate, you won't have to imagine what it feels like to push through. You'll remember. And memory is powerful. It quiets doubt. It strengthens resolve. In a world that worships comfort, choosing discomfort is quiet rebellion. A personal declaration. I will do what most avoid. I will grow where most retreat. What waits on the other side of that choice isn't just progress, it's power. Not the kind that needs to be loud, but the kind that stands still, unshaken, grounded. Discomfort fades, but the character it shapes, that lasts. It teaches you to stay composed in chaos, to choose logic over emotion, to stand firm when everything in you wants to run. Every time you lean into what's hard, you're not breaking down. You're building up. You're not surviving the moment. You're leveling up from it. And over time, those small decisions, those private battles, they shape you more than talent ever could. That's the reward only discipline can earn, and the strength only discomfort can teach. 7. Reconnect with your why. Discipline fades when your reason disappears. You may start full of energy, driven by a goal. But when routine gets hard and life gets messy, only one thing keeps you going: your why. I once asked a man who lost over 40 pounds what kept him going on the days he felt empty. He didn't mention willpower or motivation. He said, "I picture my daughter walking down the aisle, and I want to walk beside her, not watch from a hospital bed." That's not a workout routine. That's a reason. And a reason like that outlives excuses. Motivation is fleeting. You can feel unstoppable on Monday and defeated by Thursday. That's not failure. That's being human. The mistake isn't feeling unmotivated. It's relying on motivation to carry you. Because when the emotion fades, so does the effort. What carries you in those low moments is clarity. Clarity of purpose. You don't need endless motivation when your why runs deep. When your reason is strong, your actions become automatic. You stop chasing energy. You start following direction. But clarity doesn't sustain itself. It must be revisited, not once a year, but often, weekly, sometimes daily. People don't lose discipline because they're weak. They lose it because they forget. They forget what's at stake. They forget how it felt to be stuck. They forget what they promised themselves. That's why one of the most powerful mental practices is regularly reconnecting with your why. You don't just write it down and move on. You revisit it. You feel it again. Because the world will distract you, and your mind will doubt you, unless you remind it who you are and what you're here for. In everyday life, your why is hidden inside the action. You don't go to the gym just to look better. You go to avoid the pain you promise never to feel again. You don't save money just to see numbers grow. You do it because you want to take your parents on that trip while there's still time. You don't stay up learning just to compete. You do it because the old version of you was desperate for the life you're building now. When you act from that place, discipline doesn't feel forced. It feels necessary. But clarity doesn't survive in silence. It has to be seen. It has to be spoken. So ask yourself often, why am I doing this? Write the answer. Put it somewhere you'll see it. Your mirror, your lock screen, your wall. Let it interrupt your excuses. Let it speak louder than your emotions. Sometimes one word is enough. Freedom, family, legacy. When discipline gets heavy, that word becomes your anchor. The more personal your reason, the more powerful your discipline. When you make your why visible, your environment becomes your ally. A photo, a note, a quote. They're not decoration. They're triggers. They remind your subconscious. This matters. And when you feel disconnected, you don't need more effort. You need to reconnect with meaning. Meaning breathes life into discipline. Discipline is the vessel. Your why is the compass. Without the compass, the vessel drifts. It moves, but it doesn't progress. That's how people burn out, even when they're consistent. They forget where they were going. But when the direction is clear, even choppy water won't stop you. You don't waste energy asking, should I keep going? You already know the answer. Because you're not just working, you're moving with intention. The strongest people aren't the ones who never get tired. They're the ones who never lose sight of their reason. That's what gives their actions weight. That's what turns effort into endurance and struggle into commitment. Reconnecting with your why isn't a soft reflection. It's a strategic reset. And every time you do it, you give your discipline something deeper to stand on. You give it meaning.